Yo, what's up? It's been a while since I made a YouTube video, and today I want to talk about making mistakes and reframing how we see those mistakes and like cringe, right? So, I think I'm the perfect person to talk about this because I'm an athlete, I'm a coach, I've been a coach for like 10 years now, and I've learned a second language. So, in all three of those processes, there's been a lot of cringe, there's been a lot of mistakes, okay? But I think the way that I look at those mistakes is different than the way a lot of people look at their mistakes or like those cringe moments, right? So, first of all, let's talk about what those mistakes mean. Everyone makes mistakes, but who's seeing those mistakes? You're not seeing them. If you just started, let me tell you that right now, you're not seeing half the mistakes that you're making. If you don't know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, look it up. But basically, people who just started something or people that are at the beginning of a process, they really overestimate their ability to accomplish something or like how good they can do it. It's not a sign of low intelligence. It's literally just you don't know enough to know how much you don't know, if that makes sense. So you just started something. We could use language learning, for example. You don't know any words in the language. So you've learned two words, you've learned 5, 10 words, and you're like, I'm amazing. I'm getting this. I'm not making any mistakes. How could you know you're making mistakes? You don't know anything. After that, after you get some more time in a field, fitness, language learning, whatever, you start becoming aware because you're taught. You're taught this is what's wrong, this is what's right. So then you can look at all the mistakes that you made in the beginning. You're able to see that you were making mistakes. Like I said, in the beginning, you didn't know anything. So you can't know the mistakes that you're making. Once you start learning those mistakes, obviously it causes some embarrassment because you were so wrong. And this is why like I won't argue with people on the internet or super young people about fitness stuff because they've essentially just started their journey and there's no disrespect to them, but I've been there before. I know what it's like to think in absolutes because you just learned some science or some information and you're like, this is how it goes. The more time you spend in something, life, fitness, language learning, whatever it is, the more you learn that there's almost no absolutes in anything that we do. Like everything is very case dependent and sometimes you're just like, I don't know, man. Like that's just it worked this time and that's just the way it is. Anyways, get back to the point. Once you get to that point that you can start seeing your mistakes, like I said, it causes some embarrassment, it makes you not want to do it, or you get hyper focused on it, and you might even perform worse than you did in the beginning because you're aware. Normally, I feel like there's no guidance given about how we see making mistakes. People just say, oh, it's okay to make mistakes, it means you're learning. But why does it mean that we're learning? That's what I'm about to tell you. The fact that you can even see the mistakes that you made in the past means that you have grown. It's a positive correlation. The more mistakes that you can see, that means you've learned more things. If you can't see any mistakes that you made 2 years ago in something that you picked up 2 years ago, you probably haven't learned that much because there's literally no way that you were doing it perfect the first time if it's any kind of complex task, right? So the more mistakes you can see, the more growth that you've made. So that means that when you see these mistakes, you should be happy. You should feel joy that you're able to recognize the mistakes that you're making because everyone's making mistakes, but some people can't see it, and those people are not growing. So good. We're making mistakes. We're happy about it. The further you get, the more mistakes you're gonna see. I look at my old lifting videos and I have videos on my phone from 2010, right? And in 2011 and 2012, I thought, man, my form wasn't as good as I thought it was. 2013, 2014, I thought my form was not great. I thought it was, but it wasn't. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I look at those videos now, it's disgusting, bro. Like for the time, it was good. I didn't know better. But now it just disgusts me. Same thing with language learning. First videos I ever made in a second language. I knew it wasn't perfect. I did, but I thought this is pretty good. month, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, I'm like, I see now, like, that's a very common mistake. I didn't know. I didn't know any better. I'm at a point now where like I'm like this whole video is just a mistake. Like I barely said anything right in my first video, which is fine. It was my first video ever. But the fact that I can recognize it now, the fact that I can recognize all the mistakes that I make in the conversation I have now, or I can pretty much recognize every mistake I make when I'm lifting or when I'm whatever. I can recognize in real time. It's not something that I don't know at the moment, and I'm gonna have to look back on. I'm sure in a couple years I'll look back on this stuff now and say, oh well, whatever. But back to the point, to sum it up, again, there's a positive relationship between the mistakes that you can recognize and the growth that you've made. If you cannot see any mistakes from your past, then you have not grown. The more mistakes you can see from your past, the more you have grown. So start looking at those mistakes as a positive thing and be happy that you're able to recognize those mistakes. Do not be sad and say, oh, this is so cringe. I can't believe I did this. Like, no, that's good. If you look back at anything that you did from 10 years ago and you're just like, I'm a perfect human being, you're probably the worst human being on planet Earth. Someone has to be the worst. The worst person on Earth has to be someone. It might be you if you don't think that you've made any mistakes. In conclusion, be grateful that you can recognize your mistakes. Thank you for watching. Have a nice night or day, depending on where you live. Peace. See y'all next time.